Next on stage, we have such a treat. We have a panel on mobilizing capital in underserved communities. Women, BIPOC, and rural founders are launching innovative businesses and solving real-world problems, but they still face significant challenges in accessing the capital they need to grow. This panel brings together leading investors and founders to discuss the unique challenges that these founders face and share insights on how to overcome them. Please join me in welcoming to the stage panel moderator Paige Hendrix Buckner, CEO of All Raise. Paige is the CEO of All Raise, a nonprofit committed to creating a tech culture where women and non-binary voices are leading, shaping, and funding the future. Before becoming All Raise's CEO, Paige served as the organization's chief of staff and most recently interim CEO. Prior to joining All Raise, she was COO of Founder Gym, the largest online program training underrepresented founders on how to raise venture capital. In just 4 years, Founder Gym trained over 650 underrepresented founders across 26 countries, and as of 2022, 10% of all Black women who raised $1 million or more in the US venture ecosystem was a graduate of Founder Gym. Following in an early career in education and public policy, Paige started her own venture, Client Joy. While building her company, she developed the TIE Young Entrepreneurs Program. Joining Paige on stage are panelists Himalaya Rao and Isabelle Styslinger. You may remember Himalaya Rao from earlier this morning, managing director of the BFM Fund, and she is the managing director and solo GP of the BFM Fund, a seed stage fund focused on highly scalable Black and diverse-led deal flow across industries within the United States. Prior to becoming a GP, Himalaya got an MBA and specialized training in lead and eventually fund manager. She is also currently the co-executive director of Venture Partners, a nonprofit aimed at training people at the intersection of race, class, and gender. Isabelle Styslinger, associate at Revolution's Rise of the Rest Fund, joined the firm in 2023 and focuses on sourcing due diligence and supporting existing portfolio companies. Prior to joining Revolution, Isabelle was a corporate venture and innovation associate at Silicon Foundry, a San Francisco-based firm where she advised Fortune 500 corporations on investing in and partnering with innovative startups. She has also worked for Netflix, where she developed privacy products and solutions and has experience lobbying for major technology companies. Isabelle graduated from Wesley College with a BA in political science and a concentration in internet law and policy through a dual enrollment program at MIT. It's an honor to have you all here with us today. Come on out.
How y'all doing? Yikes. Clearly I don't need a microphone. Hi, how you doing, BVC? I hope you can do a little better than that for me. How you doing, BVC? Let's go. Okay, good. I want to make sure you had the sweets that I heard were very good. Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. Again, my name is Paige Hendrix Buckner, CEO at All Raise. We are committed to propelling the success of women and non-binary investors, founders, and operators. We are a national nonprofit with a team of 16 coast to coast, and we have 24,000 community members with 6 chapters. We are growing, which is super exciting. And I get to be on stage with 2 bosses in their own right. And just to break the ice a little bit, I want to ask you some funny questions, or just one funny question. What is the strangest thing you've done for money?
Are you going to go first?
Do you want me to go first? Okay. All right. Okay, strangest thing I've done for money. So the week after I started my entrepreneurial journey, I did not realize how much money I wouldn't be making because I didn't have a full-time job. And I was recruited to be a model with a modeling agency in Portland, Oregon. I listened to a lot of true crime podcasts, so I wasn't sure I believed this was real, but was willing to give it a shot. And so I got 2 really funny jobs. One was a spot in a Jeep commercial that was like half of my face for half a second, and it turned into a year worth of like residuals that paid our rent, which is, we needed that money, okay? And then the second one was they asked me to drive to Seattle to take pictures for Weight Watchers, and they were just supposed to be like, I don't know, stock photos, and one of them made it to the cover. Yeah, it was kind of fun. So anyway, didn't get paid any more money, but it was just kind of a fun fact. All right, what do y'all got?
Okay, so I think most of you in the audience know this. Before venture capital and business, I used to be a social worker, and we don't make anything, right? I was making $32,000 full
You
time.
pay to do that job,
Yes,
actually.
for sure.
People, yeah.
Emotionally,
100%.
financially,
That's a
the whole thing. So, I was also a nanny on the side, and I was also working at a restaurant. And one of the nannying gigs, because I had to do like rotations, I went there and, I was like watching the baby and I was like cleaning for her. And I guess she really liked how I cleaned. And so then she took the baby and then was like, oh, this is great, because if you could just clean the fridge. So then I spent that 6 months just cleaning.
You just did a cleaning job.
Who knows how I was doing with the nannying.
Did you make money, though?
part.
Did you make more money?
Yeah.
I didn't make more money. It was still the same nannying level money, but
But you made the money.
I made the money.
You made this money. Okay. Yeah, I love it. Okay, great. What you got?
Oh my gosh, so my very first job ever was at this very tiny law firm in Santa Cruz, California, and it focused on cannabis-related law. And so I was 18, never drank, didn't do anything, was very much a square, and so I would have to go to the site of the arrest, and I would have to take all of the other goods that they had, and I was just terrified. I was like, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Yeah, and then I realized I did not want to be a lawyer. And that's what.
That's how you realized?
That's how no, it actually came much later after applying, doing the LSAT. I could have saved myself a lot of time. But yeah,
Well, there you go. All right. Well, and in our bags, in our goodie bags, we got some very CBD friendly gifts, which I was very happy about. So I'm glad that times have changed a little bit. Yeah, so we're here to talk a little bit about mobilizing capital in underserved communities. And I want to share with you all that typically when I've talked about this topic, it's been about how this is a nice to have instead of how this is actually a competitive advantage for venture capital firms. And I talked to a lot of folks at top venture capital firms from coast to coast. And what increasingly we're seeing is that communities, that people that are diverse who come and build a startup have a unique POV that allows them to have unique insights into their market, which gives them a competitive advantage. They're getting better returns, they're coming back with more profitable businesses. And that's when you look at diversity across both race and gender. And then for us, as we think about other kinds of diversity around geography and so on, the data is still really compelling. So actually, that's how I'd like to talk about this conversation today, about having an opportunity to invest in diverse communities is a shot at better gains. And so with that said, I would love to talk to you two first. Before we dive into answering that question a little more, tell me more about your organizations and some of the challenges that you all face in doing your work. You want to go first? Go first.
Yeah, so I know we covered that briefly in the bio, but I work at a firm called Revolution, founded by Steve Case of AOL, and I'm on their seed fund called Rise of Rest. And as our name suggests, we invest in the rest. So we only invest in founders located outside of the major VC hubs, so outside of San Francisco, Boston, and New York. So 75% of VC dollars flows to those three main places, but great founders can be found everywhere. And something that I've found to be increasingly true is, great founders, even better founders, are found elsewhere. They have the better communities and ecosystems to actually support them. Plus, they have the institutional knowledge. They come from industries like lumber and construction, and those are the types of people that need to be innovating the most. These are the types of industries that are the backbone of our economy in the US that we need to be investing in. I would rather invest in those people than in a 20-year-old SF, ex-Stanford grad. No shit on Stanford.
No shade. I was
no
just saying, we might have some people. No
shade.
shade, y'all.
No shade.
No shade.
But I would rather invest in the 45-year-old who has the experience and the understanding of that industry. So our fund is all about investing in that and also investing in diverse founders and women founders. 42% of our portfolio companies are women and people who identify as minorities. We've invested in over 200 companies across 46 states, all outside of that, those three hubs and counting. So hope to invest in a lot more.
And you all are in your second fund, is that right?
Yeah,
right
we're in
now?
our second
Okay,
fund, still deploying capital out of our second fund. Yeah.
We love to hear that a fund is still deploying capital.
I always have to
Yeah.
lead with that on all of my founder calls.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. There's still money to be had.
Still money.
Still money. All right, talk to us a little bit. What's going on?
Beautiful. Hi, I run the BFM fund, and so we invest in Black and diverse founders across industries at the seed stage. And so similar to what you're talking about, when we think about where investment dollars have usually flown into, it's not usually into people with different lived experiences, right? It's like people who have fit a box, whether it's through corporate America or through an educational pathway. And what we tend to find is that people who have a lot of different lived experiences come to the table with unique pain points and unique versions of reality and solutions that they bring to the table. And so it's not just that they're creating solutions for that community, which they can, but they can also be able to create solutions for pain points that affect us all. And so that's what our fund is about, is being able to place capital and resources in the hands of founders that have a markedly different lived experience so that we can have more and unique and innovative solutions to our ecosystem.
Fantastic. And I also want to give everyone a heads up. We're going to go to audience Q&A here in about 10 minutes. So if you have any burning questions that you want to ask, we would definitely invite those questions. So kind of get those kicking around in your brain as I'm asking questions. So the next question I really want to talk about is the opportunity. And for us at All Raise, we think a lot about this when it comes to gender lens, right? So when we think about women and non-binary venture capitalists, we see some really compelling data about the fact that firms with just 10% higher rates of women in their firm are getting better returns, more profitable exits, and that's reported by the Harvard Business Review. Kaufman talks about the power of diverse investment teams and making good, diverse investments that then get better outcomes. So there's some really exciting data out there, and I have more that I want to talk about with founders, but I'd love to go to the two of you. What are the biggest and most interesting opportunities you're seeing right now by investing in more diverse founders?
I mean, the world is not made for women, and it's not made for diverse people. And
Can you pause and talk to me a little bit more about that for a second? What do you mean when you say not made for?
I mean, the drugs that we're consuming in our bodies, the cars that we're getting into every day, the equipment that we're using, every single facet of our lives is not made for women, and also not diverse people. I just met with a startup that's creating glasses specifically for diverse people. Their face shapes are totally different. And it's something that an investment committee wouldn't really understand unless they are women, that they are diverse. But it's such a huge portion of our public, 50% of our population, a growing portion of our country has different face shapes, and yet most of the world is not built with them in mind. And so that's what I mean when I say we're investing in these other people. And it's paying dividends, and there's a huge market for it. But if we don't create the investment teams that have that diverse perspective, we're never going to get there.
I want to plus one on that. I mean, just when we think about health outcomes, so one of our companies is run by Kimberly Wilson, who's a Black woman, and she runs Hued. And I think that it's really important to bring up this example of like what she does is she connects culturally competent doctors and physicians to particularly Black women, but also culturally competent care to all people. But one of the things that she does is that I think is unique is that when we think about how the world is not made from the standpoint of being a woman or a person of color, when we think about traditional medical school training, doctors are trained on white models, or when we think about manifestation of diseases, are still trained on white skin. And so when we think about then what that means, even if you aren't inherently wanting to be racist, when you are doing disease identification, if you are trained in a certain way only on disease presentation on a certain type of skin, then that impacts your ability as a physician to be competent. And so one of the things that she does is that she's partnered with like Vaseline and a couple other companies to train dermatologists on how to identify melanoma in Black skin. Because that's not something that, even if you take a DEI training, that's not going to impact your ability to identify melanoma in Black skin if you've never been taught how to do that, right? And so this is what we talk about is like, and very much to what you're saying is, if the world was not made right now as we stand for women and people of color, if we have more representative leadership in founders, then they can come up with solutions that are more grounded in the ability to have clothing, have products, healthcare, education, climate tech, all of these things made with endemically made with the ability for it to be inclusive of all people.
Thank you. Okay, claps and whistles. Come on now, claps and whistles. So as we're talking about this right now, I think part of what I think about when I talk to investors in our community is that there's a huge market opportunity, right? If previously technology has been built for a different market, and suddenly you now realize how many people haven't had access to that technology in a way that made it sticky for them. This is a really exciting opportunity. And so I want to talk a little bit about helping people understand how to use a diverse lens. So first thing that I want to say is that it's important for all of us to understand our own lived experience and how that limits us. because I'm a woman of color. That limits my experience to my experience, right? I can read about other people's experiences, but I really strive to have a diverse team that has all kinds of folks because they see different opportunities and they have a very different POV that allows me to solve for our community. And so what I'm really excited about is to talk about how we make sure that teams are truly diverse so we can look for those opportunities. And I'm curious for you all, if you think about how you coach founders that you work with to think about building diverse teams so they can capitalize on those different perspectives as they are building for their customer.
I think for us, it was really important to ensure that things were measured because oftentimes we have like visions and we have missions of what we want to do, but the things that actually happen are the things that are measured. And so for us and for our portfolio companies, something that we require are those metrics around what does your employee base look like from a gender and a race and a geographical standpoint? How are you ensuring, even as you grow, that you are maintaining that? I think it's like a little bit easier sometimes when you start out with diverse founders to be able to continuously create that. You know, like oftentimes, like, you know, back when I was working at other funds and I was like noticing like a high prevalence of non-diverse founders, and we'd ask the question of like, hey, you don't have any diversity. People would be like, well, we're going to do it, right? And that's like saying like, even when we think about like creating solutions with different types of physical capabilities, if you don't start out a project with different people at the table that have different physical capabilities, you'll essentially be building for one archetype that makes it really hard later down the road for you to hire and to be able to put in features that are for different subsets. So I think for us, it's all about measurement, and it's all about creating accountability, not just for our portfolio companies, but also for us, like leading by example. And you know, California just passed the law of wanting to ensure that there's more transparency in venture capital hiring. And I think that's really important because the things you measure are the things you will be held accountable to change.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for every team to be diverse and have women. I also understand running a startup, it's hard to hire, and you want to hire the best people. And part of that is like you have to go and search the best people in the right locations. And I understand, I don't wish it to be the case, but I understand if a team, you know, it doesn't have a lot of women, you know, there's not a lot of female engineers like compared to men's. But so I think it's also about going out into the community and utilizing resources. If you're not going to hire this person, at least make sure your product is informed by the feedback that is diverse, that is nuanced, that goes across different backgrounds geographically, from a wealth perspective, from a gender perspective. I don't think there's an excuse to build a product just with a very myopic lens anymore. A team, I want it to be diverse. If it's not, what is your plan? How are you going to be held accountable for that plan? How are investors going to be held accountable to their startups? So if you don't have the resources from a team perspective, I think you can still find ways to build products that are inclusive.
Can I just add one thing to that? Because I think oftentimes we do hear about this like pipeline problem of like, oh, well, we just like don't know any diverse founders or women founders. We don't know any like diverse employees. But just because, I mean, you mentioned, right, like being a woman of color, that is your perspective. You have different lived experiences. This is like, it limits your network to a certain degree, right? But everyone has limitations on their network, but that doesn't mean you need to recreate the wheel every single time and feel like you need to have all the networks. There are other people out there that have differentiated networks. And the other like point that I want to bring up is like the floor is demographic diversity on both race and gender. But one of the other things that we don't talk about a lot is that the other layers of diversity, if we have a bunch of demographically diverse people in the room, but we've all gone to the same schools, we've all had the same levels of like socioeconomic statuses, then we've been indoctrinated with the same ideas. And so really like challenging like how do we incorporate more. And it's not saying either or, right? Like a lot of times people are like, is it thought diversity or is it demographic diversity? It's not like either or. Demographic diversity being the floor, but then also how do you ensure that you have educational diversity in your team and information diversity so that people aren't accessing the same type of information from the same vehicles all at the same time?
That's right. And I think all of this is really rooted in a sense of humility, right? We don't know what we don't know. And for quite some time, we operate with this, like, this is my lived experience. I know what good talent looks like. This is my immediate network. That's where I'm going to source great talent. As a founder trying to build their team, which I've been there, as someone who's an investor who's trying to invest in folks, like you're going to start with your warmest networks first, which makes sense. So that's where diversifying your personal networks, I think, has a huge opportunity for all of us to continue to grow our own perspectives about what diversity could and should look like. We talk about age diversity on our team, geographic diversity, educational diversity. I think these are all important. Geographic diversity is something that I think a lot about also, considering the data you just talked about. I want to shift to audience questions in just a quick second, but I did want to give us some data. I promised you more, and so I want to deliver on that. So a few things that I want to bring to your attention. Number one, there's a great white paper that just came out this year called Finding Alpha, the $1 Trillion Female Economy by Monique Woodard. I see some nods. Okay, she flex. Okay, listen, she's been on all of major news outlets talking about it. And part of what she talks about is the fact that 85% of all spending decisions are made by women. And so many of the top companies can attribute their success as private unicorns or publicly traded companies to the decisions of women. And so what I would challenge us to think about is, what is a niche market? Because for a long time, markets that we've considered niche are like, oh, that's a marginalized group, or oh, do you really think a startup that supports women through healthcare is something that could get a valuation as a unicorn? The answer is yes. So what I would challenge us is to go find the data that helps us make these stronger decisions and these stronger cases about the kind of companies we want to build, but also the kind of companies we want to invest in. The second piece of the data that I want to share with you all is from First Round Capital, which is an incredible firm, and the leaders of that firm have been big proponents and part of our Always community for some time. But they say that their own portfolio companies with female founders outperform their male peers by 63% in creating value for investors. And they also discovered that if they compared teams run by women or led by women, not all women, but just led by women, they generate a 35% higher return on investment than all male teams. So what I want to say to you all is, it's not that men don't do it well. That is not the case that we're making here. But the case we are making is that strong companies have diversity in gender, ethnicity, race, geography. That's their competitive advantage in the short term, but also more importantly for investors in the room, in the long term, which is how you need to be thinking and how you are thinking.
I just want to, before we go to audience questions, kind of like double click on that.
Double click. Go ahead.
One of the things we talked about a lot in our prep call was the idea around when we think about even people who consider themselves allies, when you look at your personal portfolio, a lot of philanthropic dollars go to Black and brown communities.
This part,
but
keep going.
Then when we look at your investment portfolio, it doesn't have that same representation. And what is that saying about your own mentality when it comes to who can provide you financial returns, who can pay for that retirement, who can be included in the innovation ecosystem? And so I think that's the challenging part, and that's what we're trying to change, is we are not doing philanthropic work here.
Girl, let's talk about it.
No, we're in it for the finances.
I'm a nonprofit, so I am doing philanthropic. But y'all are investors. You are
not
doing
philanthropic work. We've spun out 2 nonprofits. I'm looking at Marquita and Luis there, right? And so they're doing wonderful philanthropic work that promotes business ownership and funder representation. But in the venture fund, we are not doing philanthropic work. We are actually creating economic impact by investing in entrepreneurs that have different lived experiences and can scale and grow a company and exit that company. The goal and like the success for us is not just that we have deployed capital, but that capital has gone to be able to scale companies, to be able to exit companies, and many more diverse founders are running companies that then get exited. That's right. That's what we're doing here. It's an economic impact here.
Just adding on to that, I mean, I think the other crazy stat is 2% of funding goes to female founders. But if you have a female in leader, a female on your board, drastically outperforms counterparts, even just any female on your board. And also anecdotally, in our portfolio, we have quite a few women who are mothers, and just anecdotally, they have drastically outperformed most of our other portfolio companies, and many of them have actually given birth as they've gone through the fundraising process, and I'm like, holy crap, how are you doing this? But ruthless prioritization, severe empathy for the customer. These are traits that women has, and it also, there's financial returns here. This is not a philanthropic effort. Like we have accountability to our LPs to actually drive returns here, and it makes good business sense to invest.
This part, you're accountable to your LPs. You're not doing this for funsies,
no,
right?
It is
there
fun.
returns.
I will say it is fun though.
That's exactly right. And the other point that I want to bring, when I think about how many women I've talked to who are pregnant and waiting to pitch to an investor, and it's seen as a disadvantage. It's like, homie, do you know how much I've done with a child on my hip?
Literally creating life.
Like how many meetings I've run? So. Yes, a child on my back, Bluey playing on the screen for endless hours, trying to get stuff done. Like, we get shit done. Moms get shit done. Oh, thanks. I'm just yelling into a microphone at this point. What other questions do we have from the audience?
Let's have it. Okay. I mean, you don't need me, but I could not get up here fast enough.
On,
Himalaya,
here,
I'm so
Shannon.
glad that we decided to add Paige and Isabelle to our show. We're going to need 4 banana suits, 4 pineapple hats. We'll see you next year.
Matching,
We should.
I
This
feel
could
like
be
this
a
is a
whole
good joke.
conference.
I'm not
Okay,
in
the
on it, but
wheels
I'm
are
into
coming
it.
off. So questions, you know how to put the questions. We actually have one right away. How do you suggest an employer pursues a diverse team when the cross-section of the workforce for their specific talent needs may lack diversity as a matter of fact?
Look like you feel real opinionated. Go ahead.
So I think that historically, there has been an underrepresented population in every single segment of the workforce. That is definitely changing. I mean, I think about like one of our portfolio companies that we've co-invested with a lot of you on is Year One, and they're creating opportunities for more underrepresented people to be promoted within engineering, right? And so there's so many organizations that, like when we think about the intersection of philanthropic work and venture capital work and startup work, there are so many organizations. Like, look at whatever industry you're talking about, there's definitely a nonprofit or a startup that is doing work in being able to promote a pipeline, and it's not negating the quality of those candidates. So if you believe I'll put a challenge out there. If you believe that there's an industry out there in which there's underrepresentation and you don't already know an existing startup or philanthropic organization that's working to create the pipeline, come find me. I will connect you with that resource. Because this is all I do, is connect resources and connect organizations and people to be able to help promote the pipeline. So I will find you an organization that helps you get the talent that you need.
End of. Done and
What
done.
did you say? What did you
End
say?
of. Just taking care of it.
I know, she's
Thank
like,
you.
we solved all of your problems.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, great.
What challenges have you faced with your own unique identities in venture capital or other entrepreneurial spaces? What have you done to overcome them?
Oh yeah, I could write a book on this. Yeah.
We agreed. You already have a book. Yeah.
I have many book titles going in the works. Yeah. Oh gosh. Mommy, I'm scared. I'm in therapy. Don't worry. So what challenges have I faced? I mean, I think women in venture capital, I think it was like 16% are female like capital allocators. So I think right as you enter the room, I've noticed, especially in Silicon Valley, I would enter the room, I would lead the deal, I brought in the deal, have an analyst with me, as I was telling you before, and the company would only pitch to the analyst, the white man who's 6'3", and I did all the work, and I would ask him questions, and he would turn to the analyst and answer those questions. And I think part of it is being okay taking up space and calling it out. And it's something that I wish I had done earlier in life, but I also think it's having the right people around you and having allies. You know, a couple weeks later, I was in a different meeting, and I was with a male partner, and he noticed the same dynamic, and he said, actually, Isabelle is leading this deal. You should probably direct your answers to her. And I mean, I would love to have more female partners, but I think male allies, there's more male allies out there that can be potential allies. And so I think it's gaining buy-in from them. And I think it's being able to take up space. And this is something I tell female founders a lot. I was talking to Allie about this last night, is that female founders caveat their success. They feel like they need so much data and evidence. And when I'm going and I'm asking, what's your long-term vision? Where do you want this to be in 5 years? Without fail, the female founders have a much more smaller vision. And I know that's not really what they want, but I feel like they think that's what I want to hear. Whereas the male founders, based off of very little data and revenue, are like, we want to change the world, we want to take down Convoy, I mean, it's already happened, but take down Snowflake, whatever. And I tell the founders, female founders especially, it's like, take up space, think big, and don't be afraid to kind of like think big. And I wish I had someone tell me that earlier in life, but I'm very grateful for the people that I had around me that allowed me to and pushed me to eventually.
think for me, and Ali actually talked about this in her talk, was like, oftentimes I feel like because I started out my career in social work, not in consulting, not in investment banking, when I walk into rooms, even that are demographically diverse, there's a socioeconomic class divide there from the background, and that really used to bother me a lot in the beginning. I've learned to lean into that and to say, like, it's fine that I come from a different class background, because actually that's what we're promoting here, is that we are investing in different classes of people. We are, just because you come from a different class doesn't mean that you don't have something to contribute, and actually your contributions might be fairly unique in a homogenous group. And so I think that's what I'm like, I think it's definitely a process, also in therapy, right? And so definitely still a process.
Plus one to therapy, go ahead.
Autobiography is what we've decided, it's wisdom or cake, because we didn't know what was gonna come out of my mouth today, so.
Because she had cake before this, yeah.
Just wisdom so far.
Yeah, wisdom informed by cake, which is always my favorite. I just wanted to share quickly, I had the privilege of going on a 7-city tour within about a week of publicly sharing that I was the CEO for All Raise. And it was my chance to talk to 150 of our community members who were diverse in race and age and diversity around geography and all the good points. And so what I learned from women founders is that they often get asked questions about risk. Right? So often male founders get asked questions about opportunity. How big could this market be? And women get asked questions about, well, did you think about this? Did you think about this? Are you sure the market's that big? So when we think about how women then show up in that meeting, it's often in a defensive instead of an offensive way, like they have to show up in the meeting and defend their rationale. And it just shifts the dynamic in the room. And also it makes it, it's part of the reason why the data says women aren't getting investment, right? We're looking at them as a riskier opportunity or riskier investment. And then for women investors, part of what we hear over and over again is this needing a male ally to show up for them, to co-invest, to recommend them for a board, to recommend them for hiring or for promotion. And even when they go out to raise, just constantly being questioned. So yeah.
Paige, that reminded me about something, and I think this might be helpful maybe to founders. It's been my own personal journey, is oftentimes I feel like I'm walking into rooms, particularly because I'm the bridge between two different communities, and so then I often feel like I need to defend my position and convince someone that what I'm doing is correct, and when that translates into fundraising, oftentimes people are coming at it and saying like, no, we don't believe that what you're doing is going to yield results. Yes. And I constantly, especially in the first couple of years of fundraising, was going back and being like, let me show you all the data. Let me do this. Let me do that. And I've really had to pull back and sit with, not everyone is going to understand. Yeah. And it's going to feel kind of sucky when you're like, what I'm doing works. Here's the track record. And they're like, nope. I just don't think so, right? And instead of like always like trying to exude, like, let me convince you that it's right, I've been like sitting with the, okay, this is not going to work, like this is not a good fit, and actually that's opened up so many more doors to people who I don't need to convince what I'm doing is right. They actually already get it, and then they help me, enhance that. And so if that is like resonating with founders, because I think oftentimes founders and funders, we're all fundraising, right? And so it's tough. Fundraising sucks.
The secret that no one knows. Everybody's
tough.
Fundraising.
Everyone's fundraising, and it hurts all of us. We are not emotionally well doing it, but we can start to think about it in terms of like, what does a partnership look like? And you coming to the table with your own power, and not really like trying to convince someone so much that what you're doing is right, and finding the people who are going to build with you.
That's Shannon's response. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Women and people of color are less likely to be in the field of technology and therefore AI. What needs to be done so that underrepresented founders can take advantage of economic opportunities of AI?
It starts early. It starts in preschool and elementary school and high school, and giving people models and role models of what they could do. It's just like founders. It's when we go to a community, we try and really accelerate growth. We want to share founder stories. We want them to see what they could envision what their life could entail. So it starts with educating at the earliest levels, finding communities of people that will support you at the earliest levels, because there is that disparity. Like, as much as I would like to hire all women, like, that's not the case. And so it's communities like this that are involving, accelerators and universities and educating people at the earliest level.
And I would say there's a lot of great diverse tech talent right now in AI. There's so many engineers. You just need to know where to look for them. Many of them have been working at tech companies for years and have been diving in and tinkering. I had the privilege to attend an event with the A16Z Cultural Leadership Fund. There's so many folks there who were like, yeah, I've been in this tech for some time. I've now pivoted into AI. You just need to crack into those networks. So again, I think your advice earlier about going to find those affinity groups where those people are showing up could be a huge opportunity for you to unlock talent in that space. And I think with their unique perspective, they're going to build some really cool tech in the next several years because they'll be able to see a market opportunity that I think other people won't.
I think, like, truly just expanding beyond your
personal
network. Yeah. I was just thinking about it. Like Marquita, we work with Jennifer at Creative Devs. Every time I get on the phone with her, she's got 20 new AI things that she wants to talk to me about, totally over my head, right? And I'm like, let's slow down here. I'm on a panel, or I'm on a call, like a syndicate call with 12 other women of color fund managers talking about AI, right? There's founders that are joining. So I think they're out there, and you need to be able to access a different network than what you're currently accessing, which takes bringing on different people into your own network, connecting here, right, like with different types of people, because for me, I don't feel like I have a lack of women or people of color knowing about AI. I got so many people.
But you went out there and you looked for it. Yeah. I think that's the same. It's like, if you're not going to hire someone, there are communities out there, and it's never been easier to go out and online to connect with people, and more companies are being founded outside of the major VC hubs that I mentioned than ever before. Yeah. There's been a 10% decline over the last 10 years. And I swear to God, like, if you just go out and look for it, you can meet new people and you can really broaden your network.
Thank you so much for this. I guess my last question is, are any of you looking to hire a talented MC with a flair for comedy? But we can talk about that later.
She's trying to get a job from the stage.
I'll send you my resume.
Thank
you, Paige and Himalaya and Isabelle. This has been incredible. So thank you so much.